Look, we're going to talk about US Roe versus Wade. That is, of course, the controversial debate that is raging over there about abortion. Democrats in the US will be leading a vote in the Senate that will aim to safeguard those abortion rights.
Yeah, it comes after a leaked draft opinion, as they call it, from the Supreme Court suggested the decision protecting those rights could be overturned. Let's talk to Gloria Allred, women's rights attorney. Morning to you. It's fascinating to talk to you on this because I think from a UK perspective, this is something we find very difficult to understand, why something which is a right over here now, why in the United States that would be challenged in this most fundamental way.
Well, actually, it has been challenged ever since 1973, when the United States Supreme Court decided that a woman has a constitutional right to a safe and legal abortion. The anti-choice forces, the mandatory motherhood forces, have been challenging it over and over again in the courts. But what is different now is that there are 3 justices that former President Trump nominated and that were confirmed. And they add to 2 other justices, making a 5 justice majority out of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. And even though they said in their confirmation hearings that they respect precedent and that Roe v. Wade is a super precedent because it's been affirmed in other cases many times, despite that, they now appear to be on the verge of issuing a final opinion in the next 6 weeks in which they strike down Roe v. Wade. And this is serious. This is dangerous. This is horrific. And we are going to mobilize and fight against it. Many women and girls are already mobilizing, and many pro-choice men are supporting. And we are going to fight against this because our rights are now going to depend on which state we live in out of the 50 states and not on the Constitution.
And one of those men who is pro-choice, who acted very swiftly in the wake of this kind of shock opinion that was leaked last week, was Majority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer. And he moved very swiftly, didn't he, to bring this all-important procedural vote in the Senate. If this vote does bring a bill which would codify abortion in law, how would that change things?
Well, the Women's Health Protection Act, which has been passed by the House of Representatives and now will come up for a vote tomorrow in the United States Senate, actually will not get the vote that it needs. Because even though, generally votes are by the majority, and maybe we would have 51 votes, 49 Democrats, 1 appears not to be for it, 1 Republican for it. That would be great, and we could pass it nationwide, but there is something called a filibuster. And in other words, in order to even get to the vote, we're going to need 60 votes to break the filibuster. We don't have those votes. This bill is not going to pass. So we're going to use this at the next election. We're going to remember in November when the next big election is. And we are going to fight to have pro-choice elected officials and not anti-choice officials who want to deny us our rights. Because what the states are doing, many of the anti-choice states, that's about half of the states in the United States. States like Louisiana, for example, are just going, to the extreme. There is talk by elected officials in Louisiana to pass a bill to declare abortion as murder, even when it's just a fertilized egg. So it's what I've been saying for many years, that they want a fertilized egg to have more rights than an adult woman. That's outrageous. And they even want to compel 12 and 13-year-old rape victims who have been victims of incest, impregnated by their own fathers, to be compelled to take that pregnancy to term. That's how cruel that these anti-choice elected officials, some of them, are. So women are going to be like refugees in these anti-choice states. having to go to haven states like California or New York. Many of them won't be able to afford the travel, the bus fare, the train fare, the gasoline for their car. So we're going to try, for example, in California, to create funds, taxpayer funds, voluntary funds, to provide these women money to travel to our state and then to provide a free abortion here if that's what they decide they want.
Look, I know it's not an ideal solution to all of this because democracy takes time, but isn't this in some senses a democratic move? To take it out of federal law and to put it into state law, at least people within those states can then exercise their rights to say who they want to run them and what laws they want to be implemented in their state.
I would have to respectfully disagree. I don't think it's democratic. We have certain values and certain principles, and we are guided in that by the United States Constitution. We do have state constitutions in many states, like we have here in California, where I am right now. But no. What is going to be next up for a vote? Free speech? No, that's a constitutional right. That should not be decided by elected officials in different states. What about marriage equality, which was grounded in the right to privacy? Is that going to be next? What about the right to contraceptives? There's been a United States Supreme Court decision that a married couple has a right to use contraceptives. That has not been challenged. Now, many of the anti-choice elected officials want to challenge that. What about interracial marriage? There was a very famous U.S. Supreme Court decision on that, Loving versus Virginia. Now we are concerned because of the reasoning of this draft opinion. If that reasoning becomes language in the final decision, are we going to have states voting on whether they're going to allow interracial marriage anymore? This is just not acceptable. Most of all, it's dangerous to women's health because if they try to self-induce an abortion or have an abortion, a back alley abortionist provide the abortion, it could be dangerous to their health and their safety and their lives. And by the way, they're even trying to control the pill, which would self-induce abortion. They're saying that women, and half of all abortions in America these days is by a pill at home. They're trying to say, well, they'll have to see a doctor to get the prescription first, in person. Many of the women who are pregnant are having a consultation on telemedicine on the internet, and then they get the pill in the mail. They can take that pill safely and self-induce an abortion. They want to stop that. This is all about controlling women and girls. They think that some elected official in some other state or in the United States Congress should decide for that young woman, that poor woman, that woman of color, that rural woman, that woman they have never met, whether that woman can have a choice to have an abortion or not. That's wrong. We are not going to suffer that. A woman should be trusted to decide for herself about her reproductive life issues.
Well, you make your case incredibly powerfully. Gloria Allred, women's rights attorney, thank you very much for joining us this morning.